The North Carolina Constitution, years of court cases, and geography place limits on what state lawmakers can do with election redistricting. A recent John Locke Foundation research brief explained how these limits affect a particular county. The author of that brief is Dr. Andy Jackson. He is director of the Civitas Center for Public Integrity. And Andy, you decided to look at Caldwell County. Why Caldwell?
I decided to do Caldwell because they happened to be the first county that had a redistricting hearing. There's probably no accident because the chair of the House Redistricting Committee represents Caldwell County, and one of the chairs of the Senate Redistricting Committee also represents Caldwell, along with a couple of other counties.
And you mentioned during the course of your research brief, this suggests that if there's going to be any kind of political clout in the redistricting process, Caldwell County would be one that you would think would get it.
Certainly. I mean, having that representation on both committees certainly doesn't hurt their cause. And there were several speakers that came out during that first hearing saying, really emphasizing strongly how much they like to keep their representatives in the House and the Senate in North Carolina, as well as their member of Congress, how they don't want to have the county split. They probably got wind that Caldwell County may be split based on some early data that we got in. And so they really emphasized that. However, despite that, it looks like Caldwell County is going to get divided at least once and maybe twice in redistricting.
Yeah, in fact, that was really the point of your piece, the fact that Caldwell County now basically is not divided in any of its districts, House, Senate, or congressional, but almost certainly will be, at least in some respects, because of the restrictions that are placed based on the numbers, the geography, and the Constitution and court cases.
Right. And this especially comes from the Stevenson versus Bartlett case in 2002. And the requirement from that, based on North Carolina's constitutional requirements of having equal population and doing as much as possible not to divide counties, is to have groupings of counties that the formula is basically the minimum number of counties containing the minimum number of districts. But because of how sparsely populated much of western North Carolina is, it turned out that that is a grouping of 17 counties divided among 3 Senate districts. And it just so happens that the way Caldwell County fits in that configuration of counties, they're the only county that borders Catawba County, which is in there, and it essentially requires that they're going to have to be divided just to make sure that each of those districts maintain equal population.
One of the other interesting things that you point out is that there's going to be a little bit of a difference on the Senate side versus the House side, talking about the State House. And so if there's going to be any political maneuvering or political fighting, we could see instances of them in the case of the House, but not probably in the case of the Senate.
The Senate looks like it's cut and dry. There's really nothing you can really do about that. And there's actually, especially in the rural part of North Carolina, a lot of districts on both sides are like that. It's kind of predetermined. It's math and geography. There's really nothing that legislators can do without violating the court orders and the Constitution, so they just can't do it. However, in some instances, and this is the case in this part of North Carolina on the House side, there are some choices that you can make as far as grouping the counties. And there's 2 different groupings that Caldwell can be in. One is a grouping with Alexander and Watauga counties. Caldwell County would be in the middle in that grouping, so they would have to get divided then almost cleanly down the middle. There's another possible grouping where they could be in, where it would be Caldwell, Watauga, Ashe, and Allegheny. In that case, Caldwell County, which is almost big enough to have a whole House district on its own. In fact, it did have its own House district last time around. It's just a little short of that this year. They'd have to grab 1 or 2 precincts from Watauga. So Watauga would be almost whole, but not completely whole. And in that instance, Caldwell County would be whole. And they have options. It doesn't really affect the political equation too much, but it certainly would make a difference to the folks in Caldwell County. At least that's what they're saying.
Now, all of what we have been saying should be of interest to people with an interest in politics in Caldwell County, but this has a larger implication. You have used this as an example of the fact that regardless of the political clout of a particular county, regardless of the history of having a single district. There are a lot of things that are already baked into the cake in redistricting that are going to make some determinations, not just in Caldwell County, but across the state.
Yes, that's true. You're going to see similar things all across the state. I gave an example. Actually, I testified in Nash County a while ago. We already know, for example, that Nash and Wilson County are going to be grouped together in the House. That Nash County is probably going to be split so that there's a couple of precincts of Nash County that join with Wilson. Nobody has anything against Nash County. It's just the way the population is there and in Wilson, and the way that the geography of North Carolina works that puts those things together. Now, there are a lot of cases, especially in your big counties, Wake, Meck, where you're going to have, say, 13 House districts, and there's a lot more freedom within the counties. But in the rural parts of the state, a lot of times you'll have strings of counties lined up, put together, and it's predetermined really which of those counties are going to be divided.
So in some cases, when people eventually see maps and have complaints that, oh, my county is split, or this is a much different district than what I'm used to, it's not necessarily because lawmakers wanted to do it. They had to.
They had to, and there are going to be a certain number of choices they can make. But I think before people decide to complain, they might want to look at why their districts are the way they are. There are certainly going to be districts that if you just looked at it on a piece of paper, it will look gerrymandered, but in fact that's just the natural configuration of the counties and the population of those counties.
If you'd like to learn more about this specific example, the research brief at johnlocke.org has the headline, Redistricting Dilemmas, All the King's Horses and All the King's Men Cannot Put Caldwell County Back Together Again. Its author is Dr. Andy Jackson. He is director of the Civitas Center for Public Integrity. Thanks so much.
Thank you.